Welcome back to the Friday, March 28, 2025. This is Market Plus. This is a panel discussion that I'm glad we started when we did and not before. Ted Seifried's here. Hi, Ted.
Hi, Paul.
Hey, Matt Bennett. Good to have you back.
Yep.
Naomi Blohm. Did you feel that did we cover a lot of ground? Do you think we covered enough ground on the TV show?
I would give it an A+ for all of our efforts
All right.
and our commentary, and I am a tough grader.
What's the most important thing you think was said in that first segment?
I really feel the point about acres, I think, was right on as far as being a leading factor for next week. The quarterly stock's important as well, as I said, but acres are the big component. And I feel also that a lot of countries are watching what's happening in the United States and then getting into the weather plays as summer goes on. So we have a lot of good ground.
Well, Ted, what is happening in the United States right now? What is the big story? You talk about weather, the tariffs. I wanted to ask you about, I'm sorry, I'm going to go 6 questions for a minute. You just pick one.
Okay.
You had said something about the market doesn't necessarily respond to certain things, but has the market already stopped reacting to tariffs as much as it did in the beginning? And so if a report on one day and then whatever happens on April 2nd is different, does it matter?
Yeah, well, first of all, Paul, you could ask 6 questions. It doesn't matter. I'm going to still talk about whatever I want to talk about.
I know. We've been on this together enough.
Yes,
I know.
Right. No, what I said was that sometimes we get jaded about things, right? Mad cow is what I use for my main example, because the first time there was mad cow right across the border in Canada on Christmas Eve, we went bonkers. Then the next time we were like, okay. And then finally, we really don't pay attention to that anymore. Kind of the same thing for bird flu. And at some point, you say that's happening with Russia, Ukraine, and news coming out of that. Tariffs, no. I don't think we've gotten to that point,
okay.
Right? We are still in the discovery process of what is going to happen with the tariffs, what responses are going to be to the tariffs that we potentially put on April 2nd, what's going to happen with the port fees that we want to put on any vessel that has any sort of link to China. This is unknown, right? We are not jaded to that yet. That will have a very big impact. And you asked Naomi what the most important thing that was said in the first segment, or the show segment. I think the biggest takeaway that you have to have going into next week is that the first half of the week is going to be absolutely dominated by USDA, but the greater, bigger picture might trump all of that by the end of the week. I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm hoping we can just continue to trade grain fundamentals throughout the next 6 months, growing season, all that. But you have to be mindful of what's going on in the bigger picture, global fundamentals, global economy, how trade relations are going to work out going forward.
Matt, you've been on the road, just like everybody at this table has. Customers, clients, what are they asking? I mean, are they paying attention to tariffs? Are they paying attention to the weather? Did the USDA Outlook Forum that you were a part of, did that reaction generate the most interest from people you talk to?
Yeah, I think weather comes up every time I go anywhere, pretty much throughout the entire Corn Belt, especially north of me and west. So you could say up in northern Illinois, over into Iowa, Nebraska, the Dakotas. People are dry for the most part, and uncomfortably dry. It's not just that, I mean subsoil moisture. And so this is a bad time of year to get your moisture. And I don't think that they wanted this, because you want to plant into somewhat dry conditions.
Mm-hmm.
But, so they're concerned about that. As far as the Outlook Forum went, it was fun to be a part of. I had a lot of good feedback, but, a couple of different people just asked me, hey, on acres, don't you think you're too high? Because I was just floating 95.5. I said it's an idea I had, and part of the reason is all the meetings I've done, I've been asking people, how many of you guys are going to plant more corn than what you did last year? And virtually every hand goes up in most rooms I've been in, especially Iowa and into the Dakotas. So, whenever I talk to these people, they say, hey, how much is too much whenever profitability is where it's at? And I said, well, you got to ask yourself, what's soybean profitability? Because if I go back 2 years and I come up with a 94.6, where we were at 2 years ago, I'm making the case that 94.6 is the baseline. And the reason is because whenever corn was $6 trying to entice people to plant corn back then, beans were 13. Now you've got fall bids for $9.75 for beans. And gals are just saying, we can't make money there.
I don't pull numbers as good as all you. I have to always write them down. Naomi, I think in your newsletter this morning, you said the average of the estimates is 94.36, so a little lower than what he's saying. Is there a magic number come next week? for corn?
I really think if we come in anywhere near that 94 number, it's priced into the market already, period. And the market is going to ignore it and say, all right, we priced it in, let's look at the next thing. So it would be a game changer if the number was more than 95 or towards that 96 level. There was one group out there today that said 97. If that was to actually happen, that would be really frustrating, but it would be quite friendly for the soybean market. Kind of back to the trade and tariff, though.
Yeah.
One thing that people around the world need to remember with President Trump is that he wants the deals to get done. And anytime he's talking about trade and tariff, he always says there's a deal to be made. And I think people just need to get over any feelings they may have about him one way or the other and get down to business. And I can understand different countries wanting to maintain their look of being tough on a stance or tough on their situation. But at the end of the day, the deal needs to get done. And Trump is a good enough business person where he knows both sides need to have good things happening. So I think let's just get these deals done so we can all move on.
The
Well,
only,
Naomi.
yeah, I know. The
Yeah.
only thing I'm going to say is it a deal? Is it a good deal or a deal? And at what point does the market start going, that's not a good deal? I know it's a deal, and that's what the White House is going to. That's, I think, where some of the resistance and hesitation is. Sorry.
I think, one thing that Ted said that is paramount is he said potential tariffs. I mean, last couple times we got to the point of the first of the month, it's like, oh, we're going to wait another month here. And what has happened here, and I agree with somewhat with Naomi, is that he's saying this is what we're going to do. And the reason why, there's a difference between threatened tariffs and instituted tariffs, right? And so essentially he's trying to elicit a response. I'm not saying he's right. Don't persecute me here. It's just a matter of that's what he's trying to do, is he's trying to bargain. And has there been some movement? Yeah, there has been. The last thing I'll say on trade and tariffs is that we do have some pretty big imbalances with people. And I feel like there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, until we get these imbalances figured out, we're doing reciprocal tariffs. If you're going to go 25%, we're going to go 25%. I think that it makes sense to me.
I'm
Want
trying
in
to
on
be
this?
good. I'm trying to be
Okay.
patient.
Well, then I'll give you the first question.
No.
Oh, he wants
You
to
want
respond.
this?
I want to
No,
hear what he
okay,
has
we're
to
not
say.
done.
Let's go, Ted.
Well, first of all, they say trade wars are quick and easy to win, right? So we'll see about that. I think it's very interesting, the dynamics of how this has been handled so far in the last couple months. You get the feeling that we're playing good cop, bad cop with Canada and Mexico. We're being really tough on Canada, really tough on Canada. And when we talk about fentanyl coming over the borders and things like that, that's really more of a Mexico problem, but we're really being tough on Canada. Whereas with Mexico, we're being really rather friendly, I feel like. The concessions that we're making seem to be going towards Mexico. And I think we're doing this, and the timing of all this is because we're showing the world, look, we can either be really mean to one of our best allies, and we can be really friendly. Like, it depends on how you want to play the game. We can be either or. But there's a stark difference between how we're playing the game with Canada, how we're playing the game with Mexico, and what we're doing with China. There's virtually zero communication, zero dialogue happening with China, trying to fix the tariffs that we have put on top of the already standing tariffs. We're not working to deal with China, at least if it's happening behind the scenes. But there's no talk of doing anything with China. I think that the message to China is that we are going to be exceptionally hard on you, and there's really no negotiation unless you guys come to try to make concessions first. I think the deal with China is going to be a much, much harder deal to get than with any other country in the world.
And I think it's interesting. I mean, what you're saying, with their tariffs to China, they're at 10%. And with the tariffs back that China's putting at us, the things that they need from us the most, they have a smaller percentage tariff on it. And the things that they don't need as much, they have a larger percentage tariff. So like specifically it was 15% with corn and wheat because they don't actually import as much corn and wheat from us. But the soybean number was a 10% tariff because they actually do need to be able to buy some beans from us. So yeah, we'll be watching.
China likes to leave their options open. They don't want to put absolute tariffs on us necessarily, but they're going to tell their buyers, stay away from the U.S. as much as you possibly can.
Oh, for sure.
Look at the amount of sales that we have on the books for new crop soybeans. It's the smallest that we've had in like 20 years.
Yeah.
And that's coming from last year was really small at this time of year too. they tell their state-owned buyers, which is all of their buyers really, don't buy from the U.S. unless you have to. But they leave the door open because they realize that they can't buy all of their needs from South America.
Absolutely.
Okay, Matt gets this question, and I thank you to all who've submitted questions. We're probably only going to get like one. That's okay. Glenn in Ohio sent us this one in on X. In this poker game of international grain trade and cargo shipments, currently, who appears to have the winning hand? China, Brazil, or the U.S.? Matt, who's bluffing? As a farmer, I really don't like the cards that we're holding.
I mean, clearly the cards we're holding are pretty tough. I mean, if you look at Brazil's situation, Brazil is exporting the heck out of corn and beans the last couple of 3 years. Right now, they don't have a whole lot of corn. They exported a ton of corn. And it's part of the reason that I think there could be some volatility this summer. It's just our competitors and how much that they lack. You look at China, and China's not exporting anything. We know that. As far as our products that we're worried about, corn, soybeans, and then you look at the U.S. The U.S. is definitely beholden to, we have to have a fair amount of export activity. That's all there is to it. We've built in, as far as corn's concerned, a pretty decent export number, but I think we've overshot it big time here this year. And so who's bluffing? Who's in the best seat? Right now, I feel like the U.S. is in a really good situation as far as this corn export situation goes. But on soybeans, in my opinion, I think that it's going to be tough moving forward. I'm afraid that you're going to come in and have to lower bean exports at some point. It's a distinct possibility, especially if these cancellations happen, like Naomi talked about. Whereas on corn, I don't think there's any direction to go other than seeing those exports grow.
The clear winner is Brazil. Clear winner is Brazil. They're not fighting with anybody. They're getting all the benefit of any extra business. I mean, they're having a time in Brazil right now.
That's why their stocks are so low on corn.
Absolutely, although they always run themselves out of corn, basically. But look, when it comes to the major players or the combatants in this, that's not Brazil. Us versus China, really. Mm-hmm. Matt, you say we don't really export a lot from China, or China doesn't export much. We don't buy a lot from China. Matt, I guarantee you that half the things that you are wearing or touching in that cup
just
right
talking
now,
corn and beans.
Yes, of course, agricultural things. Because that's what we're here to talk about is agricultural things. But the fact of the matter is the U.S. economy is dependent on buying a lot of stuff from China.
Right.
And that can hurt us. Now, I think we have the strongest resolve.
Yeah.
So in that shape or form, I think maybe we have the strongest cards. But look, this could get really nasty from a global economic perspective, and it can really hurt demand for things like beef, which in turn hurt demand for things like feed grains, for fuels, feedstock for fuels as well. China's really trying to move away from their pork demand, but also the amount of protein they feed pork. They're trying to adjust their feed rations to cheaper, more corn. I mean, there's a lot going on here that make you very concerned about what the global trade market, tariffs or no tariffs, what that might look like going forward. So I'm going to go back to what you said in the main program. We need to be doing whatever we can to develop domestic demand, crush for soybeans. Let's take on Argentina on the meal export market, but also biofuels, right? So yes, domestic demand, that's the change that needs to happen in American agriculture to be sustainable for the longer period of time.
And I don't think it's any secret. Like Secretary Rollins, they announced today she's doing some trade mission trips to other countries to try to get them to more interested in our ag products. So it was 2 in South America, and I feel it was 3 in Southeast Asia, and the other one I feel like it was United Kingdom. So they're also doing the behind-the-scenes work that if things fall through with China on the trade issues, that they're trying to get other customers lined up for us as well.
All right, Naomi Blohm, thank you. Appreciate your time. Matt Bennett, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Ted, always.
Yeah,
a pleasure.
always a pleasure.
Thank
Great
you.
to see you, Paul.
Good to see you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Please check them out. Check out the TV show. Check out the Market Plus. Watch it, listen, read it. See what these intelligent people have to say. I want to let you know that we give you feedback and insight on what's coming up on the Market Insider newsletter, which comes out each and every Monday. Subscribe at markettomarket.org. By the way, we are coming to Lincoln, Nebraska on Monday. There are still just a couple of tickets left if you want to see. We'll talk with Ross Baldwin for a live taping of the M2M podcast. Next week on the TV show, we'll honor the tradition of cheese making. And no, I did not make this up. The analysis of Christy Van On Cheeseth. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week.